Hey everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. Just wanted to go over with you my first Python script overview walkthrough. And what we're going to do here is we're going to download a Eurostat data for trading purposes. Also, we're going to create some charts, quite a lot of charts actually, zip them up and email them out. So I'm going to walk you through the entire process on this script. I'll run the demo as well, and we'll see what happens. First, I think we need to introduce you to the steps. Basically, there's 5 steps. We download our Eurostats data, we extract the file, we parse and then analyze the Excel data. So I'll be walking you through all this. We iterate each country by report to generate charts. We zip up the charts and then we email them out. So let me introduce you to the data that we're talking about. If you come under here, under good old Google, you do Eurostat survey, you should be able to find this link here, which will take you to here, the European Commission out of Brussels, where they generate all kinds of cool reports. And the particular report we're interested in is seasonally adjusted for all countries and candidate countries. We're only going to focus on the actual states, and that's of the Eurozone, and I'm going to show you what we're dealing with. So you can download this, but my Python script will do an automatic download of that. So basically, what kind of file we're dealing with here is, let me just show you what we're dealing with here. You come under Python, well, actually, you won't have access to this. Golly gee. Okay, here's our downloads. So this is our exact file that we'll download, but we have to obviously extract it or unzip it. And we're just going to focus on this one file here, Excel, ESI NA CE2. So what that is basically, as I said, all the members of the Eurozone. So here's our code and info. So this is how it works. There are pretty well, looks like 36 members, maybe 35, no, 29, I think, let's say 28 members, something like that. But they each have their own country code: UK, Spain, Czech, Belgium, and so on and so forth. Not only that, but you can also extract all the data going back as far as 1985, I believe. Certain countries have been recording it at that point. You'll see that other countries have not been recording and contributing that data. Some have, it just depends. But so here's an example. This is Belgium. They didn't start recording until, actually, let's do Bulgaria. Here we go. So Bulgaria did not start contributing anything until October 94. It's right here. So this is how it works. So we have our general summary of the entire Eurozone of industrial, services, consumer, retailer, and building. And then, of course, the ESI, which is the European Sentiment Index. Now, this data is forward-looking. It's not backward-looking. But, of course, we're recording it, and we're going to chart the last 100 data points. I'm going to show you that in the charts. So, essentially, each country, like Belgium, let's say here, will have the industrial, the services, the consumer, retailer, and building. No different than PMI or the Michigan consumer sentiment. If you're familiar with that, out of the States, but this is for Europe now. Divided up by each Euro member. Now, I want to strongly hint here, this is forward-looking over the next month on how these manufacturers, let's say, for the industrial feel about their economy. and it's just an aggregate of that moving forward for the next month. This is really useful because it's forward-looking, and it gives you an idea of how that particular country or the Eurozone may feel about the industrial or manufacturing, how it feels about services and consumer sentiment and retail and building. Building is important as well for construction, obviously construction for commercial and residential. Here is the difference between technical and forward-looking data. Technical analysis is just looking at charts from past data. To me, if you're making trading decisions on past data exclusively, you're going to get nailed, and you're going to get nailed by the surprises. By you following this data, getting general trends over the next month, you have better confidence to work from because this is basically data, and the math in this data will not lie whatsoever. And you'll see what I mean. But again, it's all divided up by country. Denmark, Germany, Estonia, and Czech. All right, so now that we know the data, and it goes all the way down to, we're in January, so this is being recorded as far back as November 2015. Cool. Knowing that, let's dive into Python. Now, let me remind you of the steps that we're going. We're downloading the Eurostats and extracting a file. I'll show you that in the code itself. From there, we parse and analyze the Excel data, what I just showed you. From there, we iterate each country by the report in, for instance, industrial, consumer, retail, or building, and we generate charts from that. Just very simple charts. We zip up those charts, and it's over 100, and we can email them out to wherever we want, if you want. So let's dive into the code. Before I get into the code, I want to stress a couple of things. This is Python. I've worked with MATLAB, I've worked with Python, R, and all the other legacy languages, C++ and Java. Python I'm really digging because it's simple, and I'm going to explain further as we go into the code. But one thing I will highlight is the support's quite really good, actually. And setting it up is a bitch. I've talked about that, but once you get it set up, it works fine. Stick with 2.7, and you'll be fine. Also, out of all the IDEs I've worked with, this one's called PyCharm. It's free. It's a community edition. And as you build out more lengthy scripts, this IDE, Integrated Development Environment, will save you. And not only that, but you can do debugging as well, which is very powerful. Okay, so let's get into the code. As I've said that, 5 times now? All right, so we do the standard imports. Now, just so everybody knows, this is how I document for myself, and this code will be available for all my Quant Elite members, this script. This is how I do it. Description, and then the source of where this code comes from. Now, a lot of people are really new at coding. So usually the place most people go when they have programming questions are going to be around Stack Overflow. Let me get another sample reference here. Let's say this one. Boy, I'm not doing too good, am I? Hang on here. Maybe there is an easier way to grab this code. Come on, baby. Oh, boy. I have to do it the old school way. My mouse don't want to work with this. I don't know why. But let me just give me a second. All right. There we go, finally. So this is just one example of question from some dude usually newbies, and there's going to be a variety of answers. So you'll find the code somewhere in there with better description than I can ever give in the code. So that's how I'm learning Python as I'm doing this on the fly. And I've done it with R, I'm doing it now with Python. It seems to be the best way. So that's usually how I do my notation and my comments, because I do like my comments. A lot of people don't like comments, but I'm using comments for my own historical archiving purposes, as well as for newbies that are learning through me, and especially those that are really new to programming. All right, so as I said, we have our imports that are needed as R packages. We've got URL lib for downloading, zip file stuff, pandas, matplotlib, and then some date stuff. We're using NumPy, and we are doing zipping as well. We are doing some email stuff as well. So that's all this is for. Now, I'm going to get into this function here. This is how a function is defined in Python. I'll go through this in a little bit. This is the one. This piece of code here, or block of code, is specifically for emailing out or building an email and signing in, or sorry, signing into an SMTP server and then emailing out whatever you've sent, as well as potentially an attachment. We'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, so here you're going to find some other code that I'm just leaving in as references. Kind of not junk lines, but they're just there for archiving because I'm learning Python. I use these as red trail crumbs as a way to reference. If I need to do something similar, I have a resource quickly to go back and look at it. And that's why that's there. Okay, so this is commented out. I leave that for a particular reason. This line right here, this URL lib, before I forget, a little hashtag right here, that's a comment. So it doesn't do anything. So I've commented this line out. So what it's doing is it's actually going to the URL with that zip file that I just showed you in the Eurostats to download all surveys, and it will download it. And that's it. It'll download it and put it into the current directory. So I named it all Eurozip. So if I go into that current directory, or as a sample of that, here's that zip file. I want to extract it into, let's say, downloads. I'll show you that in a minute. These are all the files that are extracted, all the Excel files. And we went through that already. So that is that line. So we've come to this point here, and basically what it's going to do is it's going to extract the file, and it's going to extract that all Euro zip file, and then put them and copy them into the downloads subdirectories I just showed you. Downloads right here. This extracts into here. So that's pretty straightforward, I would think. No different than unzipping, right? All right, so the next step is we go through Excel manipulation now. So this is now the second step, or the beginning of the second step. And how that works is basically we are going to load in our downloads subdirectory, the ESI NACE2 XLS spreadsheet. From there, we are going to look at the worksheet ESI monthly. So we're going to open up this file, or we're going to automate that. And then we are going to look at the ESI monthly worksheets. That's what we're doing here. Cool. I try to keep the code all simple so that newbies can kind of follow along a lot easier. I've seen some programming that is very complicated. Don't ask me why. So that's what we're setting up. Now, in here you'll see DF. What is DF? Data frame. That's a very popular way of analyzing tables In this case, the data source is going to be from Excel. You could do it with a CSV as well, comma separated file. And from there, what we're looking for, actually, this is not needed. These two lines are not needed at all. These should be commented out, and all of this can be removed. Again, same thing. This can be disregarded as well. Set up a charting. That's just basically junk code. So we have here our DF, which is our data frame. In the data frame, what we're doing is we're essentially basically extracting all the columns, and we're putting all the columns and the headers into a list. Okay? So what we're essentially doing here is, you'll notice here at the top, the columns have the headers. So we're putting those into a list, essentially. So from there, we have our list of columns, and we're going to go through a loop. And now you'll notice here that these loops in other languages can get really long. I've heard about this many times, but with Python, you can have code that's very compact, and we're only dealing with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines to do a loop. Very powerful what we're going to do here. So essentially, we're going to cycle through or iterate through our list of columns. Okay, and let me just run it to here. Now this is again why I use PyCharm over Sublime, like a typical text editor, because we're now going to run a debugger. Let's do that. So I set up a breakpoint here, and off goes our little Python interpreter. So basically, running our interpreter with a breakpoint here in the loop, what I'm going to show you is this column list that I wanted to show. So let me just run it to that point. And the interpreter is running, and it's got to wait a bit for the execution to get to that point. Here we are. Okay, so if I look at the column list, you'll see here, let me just put up under values, actually right here. You can see in this list, we've got the EU.RTA, EU INDU, and that's no different than what you find here. EU INDU, EU.serve. That's how it's presented. Now, one thing I want you to know is there's here an unnamed. If you come to this column here, you'll see it's blank. So in Python, it's called unnamed, or in Pandas data frame, it's called unnamed. Okay, so this is where the code, so it iterates through or loops through that column list. And here there's SS. So it's going to basically extract the very first 7 characters. Okay? And if that SS is equal to unnamed, it'll just continue the loop. It won't do anything else. But if it's not unnamed, as you can see here, it'll continue on its path or on its merry way. So what we're doing here, as you can see here, this is the value of D, which is DF of the header. And here's all the like an example of DKINDU. So that's what it's basically extracting the column out of this data frame. So if I look at D, the value of D, just so everybody knows, if you go under okay, collecting data. If you go under here under values, that's how you can extract all the different indexes. So under the first one, or the second one, which is really the third one, you'll get the value of that column. So here's the value, 15.5. So let me show you that. Go into Excel, that would be which value? And that will be EU INDU. So it'll be here. So it'll be one of these values here of this column. So that's what we're dealing with right now. So we've just extracted EU INDU, and now it's extracting all the data in that column. So what the tail does here, it will only pull out or extract the last 100 rows in that column. So essentially, if you look in this column, and I go to the end, there's 387, I believe. Sorry, 372. So this whole column will be in D, but what we're doing is we're extracting the last 100, okay, using the tail of 100, and that is put into detail. So if I look at detail, let me just create one more. Detail. It's collecting the data. So here's our data. Does that get executed? I don't think so. So let me just step through that. So we're just here, the detail. So there we go. So we're now assigning detail of that column. So it should be the size of 100. Actually, no, because it's so it's EU INDU. So it'll be this one. Let's see. If I go into values, so here's all the values as I showed earlier. It's 100, which is exactly what we want. 0 position, 4.6, 4. So I think it's 6, 4, 3. Well, that data. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just go to the last one at 100. So it'll be, let's say, negative 3.5 if I go all the way to the bottom. Yeah, so there we go. So the last one would be negative 3.5, negative 2, negative 2.5. So that's correct. So we know that's working. So now what we're going to do is we have detailed. We know what the value of H will be. Let me just get rid of some of these, clean this up here. Now we're going to look at the value of H, which should be, our name of our header, EUINDU, which is again the header, EU.INDU. Cool. Now from there, we have our F name. We have our detail plot, which we can now plot. So we'll do that. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to save that plot. See what happens here. Okay, so it goes, well, let me just walk you through the last step. If you come under console here, you will, should say you're plotting, and then you're going to save the file. Actually, we're still here. This is our execution point in the blue. So let me just step over. We done? No. So if I go into the directory of our Python script, which resides in PyCharm process euro 2, our file should exist somewhere. Well, here's all our files. Let me just get rid of those. This is from a previous session. I'll explain this in a minute. So let me just get rid of all these PNG files. Okay. So I'm gonna run everything up until this point for the next chart. So step over. So we're now on DKINDU. So we've moved to the next one. Or have we? So we're at DKINDU, which has somewhere so we're at this column here. So we've skipped a bunch of columns. And let me just step through again. So what's our F name? So, our new current file name is EUINDU. So let me cycle back here. So we're at EUINDU. So this is our new column here that we're working on. Or are we? So let me just continue along plotting. Okay, so there's our first plot of, you can see this is the data. Now, a big highlight here I want to show you here, because I'm new at Python. This is really messed up. These are the dates along the Y. To fix this is going to take a bit of time, and I just wanted to plow through this script and other scripts. This to me is very minor at this point. I'm not going to worry about it. Just call it lazy programming. But I just want to highlight that will need to get fixed. So in our console, this should say saving whatever. There we go, it's saving the file name. So now it's going to create that new file. Now, if you look in the folder, here is our current path under charts, subdirectory of charts under the current execution path of this right here. So now we're going to create a new PNG file to be created in charts under the name of fname, which is this, euindu.png. So that will get saved. Step over. So if I go into ls, there's our new file right there. Okay, so here, let me just clear this guy. And that's pretty well it. And then it will move on to the next column, which will do EU serve, and then I'll move to EU CONS, construction, EU retail, EU building, EU ESI overall of the entire economic sentiment indicator for that region, which is pretty well the whole Eurozone. This is the Euro area, does the ESI for that, and then I'll move to each individual country of Belgium first, and then it will move to the next one. which will do Bulgaria. So basically it was doing Bulgaria Industrial, Bulgaria Services, Bulgaria Consumer, Bulgaria Retail, Bulgaria Building, and then the ESI for Bulgaria itself for this time period. And then moves to Czechoslovakia, so on and so forth. Remember, here is the codes for each country. So, as I said, we have the EU, EA for the Euro area, Belgium, Bulgaria, Czech, so on and so forth. And that's how it works. So I'm going to take out all the breakpoints and let this puppy run. And you'll see over, I don't know how many exact files it will create, but let me just let it run the whole program. So essentially when you come back to the steps, what I've just showed you is I've shown you how to individually analyze the Excel data and parse it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to iterate each report as I just indicated, and it's going to generate the charts. So we'll run that, but let me just jump over to step 4 and 5, which is essentially zipping up the charts, basically directory of chart, and emailing it out. So let me just quickly walk you through that code. So here's the end of the loop. So we're now going to, let's say, zip up the charts. So essentially all we're really doing is just creating, we'll create a zip file called Eurocharts, and it's just going to zip up the entire charts directory. And remember, it's this directory here that we're talking about, and all the PNG files that get created within it. And then all we got to do is, I'm not running this yet, but it will email out the files, basically the zip file of chart, the Euro charts, to wherever I want it to go. To myself, let's say, as I just showed you. And basically this is the actual function that will do that actual emailing out. And again, if you want that kind of information, just go here. As I've hinted at with those historical comments that I put in the code for reference. So here's that script here that I'm just about to show you. So just does some mime stuff, who it's from and all of that. And then it will just log into the server. Here, the SMTP server logs in, and then physically sends out the email and who it's to, who it's from, and that's it. But I'll let you go to that URL to understand how that works. It's pretty straightforward. That's how you basically send out emails, and I'm doing it via obviously Gmail. So that's pretty well the script. So I'm going to run this loop that I was just hinting at. We're going to iterate that loop, do it by country, send out the report, zip up the chart directory, and email it out. So let's give that a whirl. So we're going to, I think I've taken out all the breakpoints. So we'll just do a standard resume, I guess. So there we go. So now it's doing EU consumer, retail, building, industrial. Now it's doing the Euro area. And then it's going to start doing each individual country with Belgium, and then Bulgaria, so on and so forth. Sometimes there's these weird warnings, and actually it will basically create, it is opening up these figures, no different than what you may have seen in MATLAB. But in this case, I'm not going to worry about it. It's my very first script. There's going to be a lot of improvements on this because I'm fairly new at Python. So I'll let this run and stop the video. Okay, so you can see here the process is completed. It's finished up the last part of the UK industrial services, consumer retail building, and the general ESI for UK. So we're now done. Not convinced? If you go into the end here, you will see that UK is the last set. So it is finished, it does run. So let's take a look at our data. Specifically the charts file, here they are. So if I randomly pick up the EU consumer, or let's say, let's see how Latvia services are doing. There we go. Or the UK. Now what I'm really trying to show you is the mechanics of how this works. There's a lot of things that need to be improved and cleaned up. Like I said, this setup, the axis and the dates are pretty bad. So I need to fix that up. That's kind of a trickier improvement. So I'll need to do that at a later time. So the last step of what it would do, as you can see here, it will email out the attachment. Now, for my own security, it does the archive or the zipping. So if I look at, here's all the PNGs files, all images, and if I take a look at the executable directory, here's our Eurocharts zip file that does get zipped up. As you can see, it's fairly big, and it does contain all those hundreds of files of PNGs. So because we have that now available and it's been created, what we're going to do is we want to send out an email to somewhere, and then hello, blah, 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 and attach that Eurocharts zip file. I've already walked you through the function of how to do that, and that's pretty well it. And that's pretty well going to be the standard of all my scripts that I'll be creating. I was thinking of actually creating Excel files. I could do that. PDF and Python, creating those are real, looks like a real monster. So for now, keeping everything all simple and whatnot. So I just wanted to show that to you, and hopefully that'll help you out. Just give you an idea of my very first Python script. Pretty excited. To be honest, it didn't take that long. As I said, I'm learning Python on the fly here, but it's not a very difficult language, and hopefully this will help you out. And as I said, this script and many more to come will be put up for my Quant Leap members on top of, these are my walkthroughs. This is how I do it, and hopefully it'll help you out. Talk to you later.